Welcome to the sixth episode of Vinyl and Celluloid, the podcast. In this episode, I'm joined by my dear friend Claudia to discuss not only Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but all things Tarantino. Okay, so Claudia, first of all, thank you so much for being a guest. I've been talking to you about this particular episode, for about, a couple of months, or since I started the podcast. So thank you very much for making time for me. So Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, you've seen it, I've seen it. What are your thoughts on the movie?
Wow, I'm still a bit mind blown by the movie. My expectations for a Tarantino movie are always pretty high, but this one completely exceeded my expectation. It's so much better than what I was expecting. What I thought is that probably it goes directly to one of my favorite Tarantino movies, top 3 for sure.
hmm Well, yeah, same here. In my review, I said it's not quite Pulp Fiction or Inglourious Basterds, my top two choices, but actually it's a combination of both. And it really took me by surprise because it was something completely different. I mean, we know Tarantino loves westerns and the influence of the Sergio Leone's, not only spaghetti westerns, but even Once Upon a Time in America, like the title would suggest a close connection. But actually, it's a trick he played on the audiences because it's more of a fairy tale and actually a happy Hollywood storyline. You have the bad guy, the Manson family, the princess, Sharon Tate, and the hero, Rick Dalton. And in this case, Cliff Booth as well. But what I really enjoyed about the movie, it's that both the Sharon Tate story and Charles Manson and the Manson family, they're simply just to locate a story in a point in time because it's actually about the loss of relevance and a midlife crisis, something that Tarantino perhaps is going
It's
through.
feeling as well, yeah, might be. I think I felt the same about the movie.
Yeah.
What I really liked about and what I really like in general about Tarantino is that he puts his heart on everything he does. So
Yeah.
I really feel that all his movies, including Grindhouse, which is quite polemic, but we'll get there
Yes,
later.
we'll get there.
They always cover something that's very sweet to Tarantino, and I think for what I've read after the movie, he was quite inspired by some 60s movies. For example, he published a list of movies that he advises people to see after watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So I think this is a movie that's like a homage to a period in the history of cinema that's very dear to him. I totally agree. I think even though this story is kind of around Sharon Tate and Charles Mason, and please guys, if you're listening to this podcast, please go read a bit about the story of Charles Manson and Sharon Tate before watching the movie, or you will completely lose the point. Do some research.
We already know that some of the people we watched the movie with were actually not very pleased with the outcome. They said it was okay,
Yeah.
but after we sort of explained them the context, they were like, "Oh, now it makes sense. It's a much better movie than I expected."
I've been reading loads of reviews about the movie
Yeah.
too, and I've been trying to understand a bit of the backlash. And actually today I was reading a Nuno article he wrote on his Instagram about the movie as well, and he was saying that he completely loved the movie, and he was also trying to understand a bit of the bad reviews. And I think many bad reviews come a bit without context, and people that are not so well informed about what happened with Manson and the cult. I think there's no reason for criticism here, really. I think some people are a bit upset about the way he portrayed the whole story. But I think it's just his take on how it should have ended, really. And I'm just going to finish here because I don't want to spoil anyone.
No, you're absolutely right. And for me, it's like, it's important because it gives that additional flavor and context because it's never really specifically said, oh, Charles is going to dig you, but you never know Charles Manson. And you don't really, if you don't know the story, then you're a bit at loss. But for me, it's more about, it's how 1969 is actually mirroring 2019, where you no longer have a movie star or the movie star or the system that was dominating the movie industry is dying, and that's exactly like that cycle. And it's very interesting because you see some references to the movement of the new Hollywood that started in '67 with The Graduate and Bonnie and Clyde, but more precisely with The Graduate. I mean, the opening scene where you see Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski arriving, like the tiles and everything, it's exactly the same background that Dustin Hoffman goes through in the opening credits of The Graduate. You even have when Brad Pitt's Cliff Booth first sees the Pussycat, right? You hear Mrs. Robinson by Simon and Garfunkel playing, right? So it's just bringing everything together and something that I really appreciate.
Yeah, that's a beautiful scene. Also, I found what I really enjoyed about this movie is the combination of DiCaprio and Brad Pitt.
That
It's
was the next question.
amazing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the guys have such a chemistry on screen. It's amazing. It's the combination no one knew that we needed, but we really needed this combination.
True.
I think DiCaprio, and also watching DiCaprio portraying
Stupid.
portraying this character. I think DiCaprio has been a guy that he managed his career very well. He made Titanic, and he could have gone both ways. He could have his career could have went to a path of doing super cheesy movies, but he was so smart on picking the roles he wanted to play. And I think that's probably what makes him the best actor of this generation, along with probably Christian Bale and even Brad Pitt himself. But DiCaprio is outstanding. I've never seen a movie where he does like a medium character. He picks very well the characters that he wants to play. And I think actually watching him portraying an actor that is going on a downward spiral while he managed to do the exact opposite makes me think that there's still salvation in Hollywood.
Yeah, I mean, I had one note here, and I'll make a comment on that in a second, but I will address your comment on the chemistry between Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. I mean, when I first read about the whole casting situation, Tarantino described them as the new Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and I thought he was overselling it a bit. Not really. Like I would say, Rick Dalton and Cliff Booth will go down in history as an iconic duo, and that really made the movie. So for me, also that was the key point. But what I really enjoyed is the whole, I don't know, the whole component of the story, and again back to what it really tries to tell us about the changes in Hollywood. The first point would be, you see there is a scene in the beginning of the movie where Cliff and Rick are in the car, and you have Rick on the right side, Cliff on the left, and then Sharon Tate and Roman Polanski arrive. And you have Roman Polanski on the driver's seat and Sharon Tate in the middle. So it's kind of like you have Rick Dalton, who's like a hero of a bygone era. You have Cliff Booth, who's his stunt double and therefore takes the hits from him. Then you have Sharon Tate, who's kind of a buffer because she was married to Polanski, one of the pioneers and architects of the new Hollywood. He had just directed Cul-de-sac and Rosemary's Baby. And Sharon Tate, despite being young, she was still, like the movie she's part of, The Wrecking Crew, stars Dean Martin, and it's very much a very old Hollywood type of movie. So it's kind of like you have the two opposites, Roman Polanski and Rick Dalton, and in the middle you have the buffer that transition, it's just simply brilliant. And the other thing I would like to say is that it's all about the arc and exactly what you said about the character development, the way I see it. And again, minor spoiler alert, but when DiCaprio or Rick Dalton comes back from shooting all those European movies, he goes through the exact same path with his new Italian wife that Sharon Tate and Polanski did in the beginning. So it's kind of like the transformation is complete and now he's ready to go back. So, and one Easter egg that I noticed, and I don't know if you heard about it, but there's a whisper of, Cliff Booth may or may not killed his wife. You know that his wife's name is Natalie, and the fact that she drowned kind of mirrors Natalie Wood.
That's a good
So
point.
I was like, okay, that's a bit dark, but here we go.
Yeah, she may or may not have been killed as well.
And hey, Robert Wagner, who knows? Like,
Who
he's
knows?
still
Who
around.
knows? So, yeah, but that's a smart move. I think also you were mentioning building of characters, and I think this is something that Tarantino has been perfectioning over the last movies.
Absolutely.
I was telling this on the other day. I think he probably on his first movies he was kind of a bit more in a rush, and it was much more focused on violence and tough stories. And now these last movies have been, he has put a much more emphasis on building the characters before telling a story. That's
Yeah.
why probably some people are feeling a bit lost in the beginning of the movie. It's a long movie. It's almost 3 hours.
Apparently, there's a 4-hour cut.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
But I want to see the cuts as well. But he's slowing it down. He's taking his time to build the characters before telling a story. It was the same thing with Hateful Eight. For example, one of the biggest criticism about Hateful Eight is that never-ending opening scene. While everyone is it's just a dialogue. While everyone is going to the cabin. It's probably one of my favorite scenes ever, to be honest, because I think the building of the characters is so smart. And here on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, it's exactly the same thing. I think it takes him like 1 hour until you totally get what story he's trying to tell, because he's just focusing on Cliff Booth and Dalton, and that's what he wants to do. And I think it's one of the main reasons why I probably like Tarantino so much.
Yeah, I mean, he's and it's amazing. The movie's now probably crossing this weekend the 113 million at the box office domestic, and it's on the top 20 highest earners of the year. So you can feel that it's an original movie, and it's pretty much like it's still intellectual property in the sense of like the Avengers and whatnot, simply because it's a Tarantino movie and that's his brand. And picking up on that, I would love to hear which was the first Tarantino movie you watched in the big screen.
Probably this answer will surprise you, but it was Grindhouse. Death Proof.
Same.
Yeah, because when Kill Bill came out in 2003?
2004.
Yeah, I was a bit young still.
They didn't let me in.
15,
I got
16.
tickets for part 2, and they didn't let me in because they sold me the ticket, but then they told me you're under 16, so you can't go.
I didn't want to see part 2 before watching part 1. When I saw Death Proof, I had already seen Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill, but at home.
And that's really interesting because that's, again, I would say says a lot about Tarantino, because when Pulp Fiction came out, it pretty much appealed or made a mark to the boomer generation. My parents were in their 30s when that movie came out in 94. So that obviously was a staple for them, and they passed it on as a reference. Now, for our generation, it's probably Kill Bill, hands down. And again, I think maybe Django or Inglourious Basterds for the next generation.
Yeah, maybe. And what I feel also about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that more and more people are willing to watch Tarantino's movies, which I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
Because I see that the type of people that used to watch a Tarantino movie is quite changing. And this is something that I think he's going to be for sure in the history of cinema forever. And the fact that we are, if it's confirmed that his stand movie is going to be the last movie, it's the end of an era.
Yeah, I saw your comment.
and this is something that actually makes me sad, because I think he has so much to give. But I really like the fact that more and more people want to see a Tarantino movie.
Absolutely. And I think after his retirement, it will probably be down to Christopher Nolan to still create the buzz around an event movie. Because I don't know, we don't know jack shit about Tenet, the new Nolan movie, but we know that in July 2020, probably in one of those weekends, we're going to be watching it. So that's the only certainty we have about the movie, and because it's a Christopher Nolan movie. And the same thing about a Quentin Tarantino one. The funny thing, and I know you're gonna laugh and make some comments after this recording, is that I actually went to see Death Proof, and I was really excited and I enjoyed the movie. But I got tickets like a week before, and I was seeing this girl at the time, and she broke up with me right before we went to see the movie. And I was 16, and I was a bit feeling down. And I really enjoyed the movie, and I left the movie theater with a smile. So thanks, Tarantino. It was really, it's a true story, and a really cool. I don't know. It just shows that his movies have that impact. Claudia, you're also a massive soundtrack and music fan, and soundtracks are kind of a character of their own in the Tarantino universe. And there are songs that have come to define, and I know one of them you really enjoy, have come to define not only his movies but also movie history. And we're talking about Teenage Wedding in Pulp Fiction and Stuck in the Middle in Reservoir Dogs. But what's the song that made the biggest impact, or your favorite song used in a Tarantino movie? I mean, even if it's one of these two, I would like just to know what will be the third one or the second one.
My first one is definitely Mr. Blonde dancing to Stuck in the Middle with You before the bloodbath. It's probably because for me and why I love soundtracks so much, and I think this is why we had this conversation before. Pedro's favorite soundtrack is now Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I kind of beg to differ because for me what makes a soundtrack so special is first the quality of the songs, and no doubt that, and I totally agree with you when you say that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is probably the most consistent. Exactly. Because it's the soundtrack that has better songs as a whole. But I think if I think, for example, about Pulp Fiction, it has also a good set of songs, but it has some of the scenes that completely are built around the song. For example, you have Mia Wallace in Girl, You'll Be a Woman Soon. That's probably, after Stuck in the Middle with You, is the second scene I think about where a song is so strong in a Tarantino movie. And also, thinking about Mia Wallace, now I thought Dusty Springfield.
Yeah, Son of a Preacher Man.
Son of a Preacher Man. That scene is also incredible. When Vega arrives to Mia Wallace's house, that scene is also very, very strong. And I think the power of the songs on Pulp Fiction makes me think about Pulp Fiction as my favorite soundtrack, probably. In Tarantino.
No, I think it's obviously everybody has their own choices. And from a consistency perspective, I mean, you're so lost in Neil Diamond's Brothers Traveling Love, something, I don't recall the full title, but it's a really powerful song that's so well used in this movie. And Paul Revere in The Raiders, and even the bits that he used from radio promos for movies.
That was so smart. That was really smart. And even Mrs. Robinson, even though he got that song before the chorus, and I was like, what are you doing?
But one song that took me by surprise that I saw on the set list, and I said, okay, and ignored it, and was so effective in a very subtle way, was Out of Time by Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
It was spot on. Yeah, unfortunately, it's not on the vinyl or on the CD. I checked. I would say that for me, I mean, I would go not the most obscure ones, but I would have to single out three songs. The first one would be I've Got a Name by Jim Cross, that's used in a montage in Django Unchained. And I don't know, I think it was at that point in time when I watched the movie, that song really, and the lyrics sounded close to home to me. So I really enjoyed the song, and I think it's very well used in that montage. I would say that definitely Hold Tight by Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, and Titch.
Wow.
I know that
you've been practicing that for a while.
In the movie they said that like 5 times at a very fast rate. In Death Proof, because for me as a horror movie fan, I think that's the closest Tarantino ever got to make a horror movie, with the sole exception of the whole spa ranch sequence in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which Tarantino described as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre with a budget. And last but not least, because I'm a massive Roy Orbison fan, There Won't Be Many Coming Home, the track from Hateful Eight, which again it's part of a soundtrack of a Roy Orbison Western vehicle that didn't go anywhere, but it's great that he manages to dig out and go beyond the most known songs from the artists. So yeah, do you own any soundtrack in vinyl or CD?
Not Tarantino. I own several soundtracks in vinyl, but not any Tarantino, unfortunately. But I was thinking, you mentioned Hateful Eight, and I was thinking actually that I love Ennio
Ennio Morricone.
Morricone's work for Hateful Eight, because I love Ennio Morricone in general.
Yeah.
And thinking of movies, obviously, and thinking about soundtracks, he's one of the first names that comes to my mind. And he's very, very good. He's a genius, especially on the Western world. And when I realized that Ennio Morricone was going to work with Tarantino, it completely blew my mind. And that opening scene,
after openingly rejecting to ever work with him, he ended up working with him and winning his only Oscar for a soundtrack,
which is incredible. Thinking about the work that Ennio Morricone has done.
Exactly. And I mean, you mentioned Westerns. I go a step beyond, and the good thing about Ennio Morricone is that despite creating a whole new original soundtrack for the Hateful Eight, there are a lot of themes from older movies that are used. So, for example, he is the only positive thing in The Exorcist II: The Heretic, the '77 movie. The soundtrack is simply amazing, and Reagan's theme is actually used in The Hateful Eight, and I was like, whoa, I know this one. And even the main, or the opening theme for The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, it's again Ennio Morricone.
Ennio Morricone, yeah.
It's fantastic.
And Ecstasy of Gold.
Ecstasy of Gold, yes.
Geez, it's a song of a lifetime.
Absolutely. Moving from soundtracks to performances.
Ooh.
I know this is a difficult one.
Hans Landa.
Hans Landa for me.
It's the easiest for me. That one is actually also because I saw Inglourious Basterds like 1 week ago probably. I wanted to rewatch some Tarantino movies, and probably this, if you ask me what is my favorite Tarantino movie, some days I will tell you it's Inglourious Basterds, other days I will tell you there's Pulp Fiction, but since I saw Inglourious Basterds again 1 week ago, I'd say for sure Inglourious Basterds, and I've never seen a villain as good as Hans Landa in a Tarantino movie. It's insane, and Christoph Waltz did an amazing job here, and he's by far my favorite Tarantino character.
Same here. I mean, there's no argue there. I would say that his second interaction or second collaboration with Quentin Tarantino as Dr. Schultz in Django Unchained was good, very good, and I would say award worthy. But again, it's not Hans Landa.
It's not the same, and actually what really surprised me was that I didn't know who Christoph Waltz was before.
Exactly. So
Inglourious Basterds, and I was like, who the hell is this guy? In first scene, when he goes to the farm to meet the French guy and search for Jews.
Monsieur la Petite.
Monsieur la Petite. That scene is absolutely brilliant, and after watching the first scene, I was like, who the hell is this guy? Where did he come from? He's insane, he's brilliant, and his character was outstanding. He has many scenes that I recall quite often. For example, that famous scene in the theater always makes me cry and laugh when I think about when he starts speaking in Italian. At least in my head, it's almost perfect Italian. When he starts speaking Italian with Brad Pitt and the Bear Jew and
Eli Roth and all the guys. Yeah.
That scene is probably one of my favorite scenes in a Tarantino movie. It's so funny, and I've literally watched it many times, and I always laugh on that scene, and both on him speaking. How do you pronounce it?
Yeah.
And the three guys struggling, and the famous Buongiorno by Brad Pitt. That scene really cracks me up.
The only one he gets right at the first is what, Dominic De Coco or Antonio Margaretti?
Antonio Margaretti. And then he said, I want to hear the music.
Come on. No, I mean, Hans Landa for me as well. I would actually recommend, there's this really brilliant movie directed by Roman Polanski in 2011, Carnage, based on the play with Jodie Foster, John C. Reilly, Kate Winslet, and Christoph Waltz. And it's all set, it's based on the play, so it's all takes place in a living room, and it's simply brilliant. And again, it's a more modern take on not Hans Landa, but Christoph Waltz delivering his charisma in a different vehicle. So one that definitely I really enjoyed. Plus my first guest in the podcast, my friend Miguel, actually reenacted the play in an amateur theater in the Netherlands.
That's cool.
So he was the one who introduced me to that movie.
That's really cool.
So switching gears, unloved Quentin Tarantino. When you see rankings, I mean, Pulp Fiction and Glorious Bastards, they're all up there. Kill Bill halfway through. There are three movies that they're very good, but they seem to land in the bottom of those lists. I would say Jackie Brown, Death Proof, and The Hateful
Hateful
Eight.
Eight. Yeah.
So what? Well, we already agreed on Death Proof as having a special impact, I guess, for both of us because it's the first time we experienced Tarantino as he intended. But when it comes to The Hateful Eight and Jackie Brown, I mean, what are your takes?
It's quite a hard question because when I think about Tarantino, I think about consistency, and all his movies are very, very good. So, but if I have to build a ranking, probably those would be the movies I would put on my top down. Nevertheless, I would not give less than 8 out of 10 to any of those. But I think I've seen the ratings for especially Death Proof, and they are a bit unfair. I believe. I think probably most of the people lost the point that this is supposed to be a Series B movie or a take on a Series B movie, and I think many people didn't understand that probably. But that's just how it's supposed to be, and I think for his take on a Series B movie, I think it's absolutely genius and it's funny. I really like both parts, even though the other one is from Rodriguez. I
Yeah.
have to be honest. I liked Planet Terror more than I liked Death Proof, but still I love both parts. It's honestly so funny. It's the kind of movie that you just can't take seriously. It's a Series B movie, and that's why I think people were very, very unfair and very unfair. This is his take on something that's very close to Tarantino's heart as well, and he did an amazing job.
I would say that Death Proof, well, for once it was split for the European and global or outside of U.S. markets for the very simple reason that grindhouse is a concept that we don't have here, so we would never be able to fully grasp it. I would say that the issue was with around the timing, which the original release was Easter 2007, which is not a good time for horror movies, or at least the kind of violence, unless you're Mel Gibson. But again, yeah, it was released during the summer, and it was kind of a big thing. I recall at the time that it was, well, the latest Tarantino movie. It was nominated for the Palme d'Or in Cannes. It was his second movie to actually be nominated. So, I mean, how bad can it be, right? We mentioned Hateful Eight, and actually for me, the reason why the Hateful Eight worked so well is that it's probably since Death Proof the only movie I didn't watch in the big screen because it wasn't that appealing, so my expectations were somewhat low despite being a Tarantino movie, and therefore that's why it worked so well because I was not waiting for something major.
Hateful Eight. I saw that movie in the theater actually after Death Proof. I've seen them all on the big screen, and I went to see Hateful Eight. The cinema was completely packed, and I remember I was watching the first scene when they're all talking to each other. That huge dialogue that I think it lasts for like 25 minutes at least before they reach the cabin in the woods. And I was the only person finding it funny. I completely felt the atmosphere in the room. Loads of people were leaving the room actually. People were bored. That's why I think probably it was a movie hard to digest for many people because that opening scene is very long. So either you're on it or either you love it or you will hate it, and I think that's what happened to many people. Then I think it was a very risky movie from Tarantino, doing a 3-hour long movie that's only going to happen in the same room. People can get bored, I think.
Yes.
And that's not the kind of thing you're expecting from Tarantino probably. And people, even though there's violence and there's action, it takes a long, long time to develop. I loved it nevertheless because, as I was mentioning before, one of my favorite things about Hateful Eight is actually the character development.
Yeah.
I loved it nevertheless, but probably I get why many people didn't like it. And Jackie Brown, actually, fun fact, it was the last movie I saw I've never seen Jackie Brown until a couple of days ago.
No.
It was on my list. I only ticked it off my list a couple of days ago. The thing I most liked about Jackie Brown was Pam Grier.
Yeah.
She does an amazing job, and I think the movie is completely around her. It was okay. It was probably not my favorite Tarantino movie, but I still think it's a good movie. Yeah, I'm still a bit torn about that one and where I would place it on my list. But it's also a movie that's it kind of divides the opinions there. I've seen many rankings that put Jackie Brown
Way up top.
up
Yeah.
top and some a bit lower down. But I think just for what Pam Grier did on that movie, incredible.
Yeah. I mean, I watched Jackie Brown when I was pretty much covering like there is a gap, and I need to see this one before. Like, I think I watched it even before Inglorious Bastards, so right after Death Proof. First of all, there are two things that will impact the audience's and critics' perspective of Jackie Brown. First, it's an adapted screenplay, so it's probably the only Tarantino movie that's not an original story. Even though when you consider the amount of influences he has, probably what the concept of original, it's a bit, well, it's in a spectrum, but it wasn't his original story, right? So it's adapted from a novel. And the other thing I would say was the expectation after Pulp Fiction, and then that's very unfair or very difficult to talk, because I would say had he released anything else after Pulp Fiction, people would still judge it against Pulp Fiction. And you still have an amazing cast. You have Michael Keaton, Robert De Niro, you have Samuel Jackson, Pam Grier, Bridget Fonda, and who was it? I think it was Chris Rock, who's in the movie.
You have Chris Rock. Yeah, you have Chris Rock in the movie.
Who ends up in the back of in the trunk of the car, right? So spoiler. No, it was released in '97.
It doesn't count.
Plenty of time.
As a spoiler.
But it's a funny thing, because it was actually my first interaction. One of my first interactions with Tarantino as being aware of his existence, because I've seen the posters in when you went to Blockbuster and whatnot. But it's the first poster I recall seeing a movie of his advertising. A Quentin Tarantino movie.
Jackie Brown.
Wow. In 90. So the movie was released in the US in late 97. I think it was around that time, or early 98, that I saw the poster. And I was like, okay, so Jackie Brown, it kind of becomes ingrained. Obviously, if you analyze the similar approach, I actually had the same opinion about Waterworld, the poster. Wow, what a movie, I need to watch it. And then, well, we know the rest. Anywho, so, I mean, the impact of Tarantino, we kind of covered this. So from the indie intern to the event movie creator, Tarantino created something that very few directors can claim, right? So
even if this time's movie is not going to be his last movie, because there are some rumors that if he makes amends with Uma Thurman, there might be a third Kill Bill, which I find weird. But I also don't think that he will finish his career with the third Kill Bill, because that wouldn't make much of a difference, I think. And I think he built a legacy, and there are so many reasons why we love Tarantino. I think for all the pop culture references on his movies that caught our eyes.
Yeah.
For example, people like me, like you, that love pop culture and love references in movies. This is something that we are always expecting from a Tarantino movie. The language, which for younger audiences, teenagers, it's something like, oh my God, he's so bold.
Yeah.
It's something that really caught your eye as well while you're growing up and watching a movie. And yeah, I think he's building a legacy, and I don't know how many more movies he will make, if it's really 1 more or 10 more, but I think his work is really is done.
I would agree, and based on that, we pretty much touched upon all the his 9 movie canon. But one of the criticisms that some even close friends and prestigious reviewers say is that all his movies are pretty much the same. They're all about revenge,
Ugh,
right?
no.
I mean, I have a comprehensive list of what each movie means to me, but I would love to hear your thought on this criticism.
Oh, I don't think I agree with that. I think there might be a point. I mean, Kill Bill is pretty obvious. That's a movie about revenge. That one, I'd
Fair
say
enough.
yes, straight away. But I don't think, for example, thinking about Reservoir Dogs, it's not a movie about revenge. And even Inglorious Bastards, I don't see it as revenge. I see it more as justice than revenge. Even though, obviously, the story of Shoshana, we know how the movie starts and how the movie ends. And how the part that she plays, probably it can easily be, we can easily think about that as revenge, but I have to think more as justice, because even though the work that the bastards do throughout the movie is more like justice work than actually revenge. Even, for example, Django can be, I'd see Django more like his take on a superhero movie than actually on a revenge story. I think he's like kind of the superhero making justice too. It's like a superhero in a Western atmosphere. But I don't see why he would be so focused on revenge. I think probably it's easy to think about that, and but I don't necessarily agree because, yeah, because of the reasons I was telling you.
I agree. I think it's a cheap take on how to bring down, like, they did the same with Aaron Sorkin and they did the same with Jordan Peele now with The Twilight Zone. It's like they need to pick up something to actually tarnish or claim that somebody is not as great as they are perceived. And
And,
that's an easy take.
and also, even if you think and if you criticize Tarantino for his movies being all look alike, that doesn't even make sense, because even if you say that based on the fact that all the movies are built around revenge, um, all the movies have very different feelings actually. So
I agree, and if I may, I have my own take on each of the 9 movies he made. So, Reservoir Dogs, for me, it's a heist movie. It's like what happens after Heat or any other bank robbery or type. So, it's just, okay, and then this is what happens,
exactly,
right?
it's a heist that goes wrong.
Yeah,
Done. No revenge here.
period. No, Pulp Fiction, it's simply an homage to a literary iconic material. Jackie Brown, blaxploitation, again a genre he enjoys, and the fact that you have the font and she played Foxy Brown and coffee and whatnot, it's quite obvious. Kill Bill is an Asian influenced movie.
Yeah,
Death Proof, Grindhouse, like we said.
the Syrian
Inglorious Bastards, a war movie. Django Unchained is a pure Western with revisionism.
Yeah, that's where yeah, kind of. I've always seen Django more like a superhero in a western, like the guy that's coming to save and release everyone from all the slaves that were trapped from people like Leonardo DiCaprio. So I see more Django as kind of a superhero in a western. That's what I really loved about that character. And Jamie Foxx is
And
brilliant
Jamie Foxx.
as well.
We would think like we're detouring here, but two things. First of all, he wanted Will Smith for that role, so you can't help but wonder what the movie would look like.
Oh my, because if I think about Will Smith in a Western environment, the only thing that comes to my mind is Wild West, of course.
And that didn't work very well, did it?
It didn't work very well, no.
But it prevented him from probably ruining the Matrix, or I think his presence would have outshined the concept.
Yeah, maybe, but I think Jamie Foxx was a very good choice. I like Jamie Foxx very much. Even though he's a very good singer, he's a very good actor as well.
Yeah.
His take on Ray Charles was incredible.
And even Collateral as a supporting
even Collateral,
actor.
exactly. So I think I couldn't think about a better person actually to play Django. So I'm really glad he didn't cast Will Smith.
Yeah. The other casting is for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He originally wanted, so when the idea was circulated, Brad Pitt was attached as the role of an investigator looking at the Sharon Tate murders, and he wanted Tom Cruise for the lead. But he never revealed who would be the stunt double, like who would be the Cliff Booth to Tom Cruise's Rick Dalton. And I think that's one of the secrets, like what's in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction, that we will never find out. Because it will be very interesting to know, okay, you wanted Tom Cruise for DiCaprio's role, fine. Who would be actually the stunt double?
Wow, I didn't know about that because I wouldn't see Tom Cruise and Tarantino working together actually, even though I highly respect both and I highly respect the fact that Tom Cruise is still doing all the Mission Impossibles without using stunts. First, it would be weird to see a guy that we all know that doesn't use stunts using a stunt in a movie. But I mean, nevertheless, I think there are people, they're very, very different people. And also, we've seen DiCaprio working with Tarantino before in Django.
True, but we never, like, there are some partnerships you would never think.
Yeah, you would never think, but still, I don't know. Also, it's very hard to judge after watching DiCaprio building so well this character. It's very hard to think how it would be with Tom Cruise, even though I highly respect Tom Cruise and I'm really looking forward to see Top Gun, of course.
Just to finalize this, The Hateful Eight, I would see it, like you said, it's all set in one area, so it's kind of like a whodunit Agatha Christie type of story, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is actually a love letter to Hollywood.
Yeah,
and
completely.
Picking up on that, I mean, one thing that Tarantino makes, and we touched on casting right now, we have two types of casting choices. You either have reviving established actors, and I'm thinking about Travolta and Bruce Willis in Pulp Fiction, whose career was down the drain, Pam Grier, Jackie Brown, David Carradine in Kill Bill, even Jamie Foxx was in a string of flops before Django, introducing Kurt Russell as the action hero of the 80s to a new generation, and Jennifer Jason Leigh in The Hateful Eight. The other type of casting is actually bringing unknowns into the light, such as Christoph Waltz and Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction. Now my question for you is, assuming he will make one last movie, which actor, actress would you like to see being cast or to be part of this revival? Because like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood doesn't really feature, you could argue Al Pacino, but that's not really, like, he doesn't have enough screen time to call it a revival.
Yeah.
Which actor or actress would you like to see getting the Tarantino revival, bringing back to life treatment?
I'd love to see like a best of maybe Tim Roth, Leonardo DiCaprio for sure, Brad Pitt, who else? Who else? Samuel L. Jackson, of course.
Yeah,
Travolta,
he needs to be there.
He needs to be there. Uma Thurman. It would be good to see them making amends after all the things that have been said in press.
Well, he casted her daughter in the movie, so I think that's okay, no?
She plays a very small role though, very, very small, but still.
No danger of doing their own stunts there. We're getting.
And she's very good, and she's incredibly. She's building a very, very, very solid career. I think she made a very good role in Stranger Things. I know you're about Stranger Things,
but I'm not a fan. But I agree that her character was one of the few highlights, along with the never-ending story.
Yeah, and also she looks so much like her mother. It's insane.
It's true. I agree. So you would go to best of. I would actually love to see Val Kilmer or James Caan, who was really an action hero from an underrated action hero from the 70s and 80s, and really I would love to see Juliette Lewis, who only worked indirectly with Tarantino via his screenplay, So Natural Born Killers. So I would really love to see her in a Tarantino movie.
Yeah, I'll bring Pam Grier back, because I think she made an amazing role with Jackie Brown. Jackie Brown is highly underrated as well. And I think I would bring her back. I've never seen many movies with her, but I was actually quite surprised. I think I've only seen her in L Word, the series. And apart from that, it was the only movie
She was in Mars Attacks.
Was she?
She was.
Oh, wow.
She was the wife of Byron, the boxer.
Oh
Yeah, well, she has
so-
minimal screen time, but
yeah.
that was an amazing cast. And she was also like our Portuguese actor. Did you know that Joaquim Almeida was in Miami Vice?
And Mariana Medeiros was in Pulp
Yes,
Fiction.
but Pam Grier was also in Miami Vice, playing a love interest to Philip Michael Thomas
Okay.
for 3 seasons, I think. So cool. I think we're down to 2 questions, and we are talking about the last movie, and he'll probably retire after the 10th movie. Like, what would you like to see? Which subject, which topic would you like to see him tackle for his last movie?
I just hope the Star Trek movie is not going to happen.
Oh, same.
I know the rumors are so strong that's probably almost impossible to deny now. But I really don't want to see Tarantino doing. Maybe that's going to be good, but
No, I think he'll produce it, but right now he's toying with the notion of a horror movie, and those, like, I believe it was in the Moscow premiere where he brought back the notion of the whole horror movie take. So I wouldn't be too worried about Star Trek, especially because it wouldn't be original material.
yeah, I think due to his love for Italian cinema and Western spaghettis, I'd love to see him doing a mafia movie.
Exactly. We agree on that. It would either be a 1940s mafia movie or even a Yakuza mafia crossover set in Japan. But a horror movie, I wouldn't say no to it. I think he has proven time and time again that he's able to direct something good and massive. But also, I would love to see a film noir from like the kind of Humphrey Bogart type of movie, but set in the 1980s. I think that's kind of like his sweet spot to actually combine those neon and bright colors with. I mean, I'm thinking from a cinematography perspective, but combining that with a perfect soundtrack and something maybe not even set in LA, but kind of like LA Confidential meets Miami Vice or something like that would be really great. And in terms of a horror movie, I think that considering he wants to win 4 Oscars for Best Original Screenplay and get the category named Best Tarantino or Best Quentin.
Maybe.
Yeah. I think a horror movie wouldn't be the best way to do it. I think Silence of the Lambs and The Exorcist were probably the only 2 horror movies. Oh, and Get Out. So 3 movies. I don't think, regardless how good he is, he will be able to deliver on that. My final question, and I think it's perhaps the most controversial one, would be, Claudia, as a female viewer, what do you think about the other criticism Tarantino is often and the other in the receiving end of about female violence and overall altogether portrayal of female characters?
That's indeed a tough question because a lot has been said, especially after the last few, maybe 2 years after the Harvey Weinstein scandal, because they worked together. I think Hateful Eight was probably the last movie released under.
Well, everything since Reservoir Dogs was like either Miramax or Weinstein.
I think Hateful Eight was the last one, and I know that Uma Thurman, especially, she said that it was quite hard to work with him. So we don't know if Tarantino knew about what was going on or not. So I'd rather think that he didn't know. Hopefully he didn't know. Also, if it's true, all the things that Uma Thurman said about how he forced her into the car and how she had the accident that ruined her knees and her neck, for the rest of her life. Yeah. But I think this is the kind of thing that probably would happen. I would like to listen to also what male actors that have been working with Tarantino have to say. This is because I don't feel he did that to her because she's a woman, but because she is the center of the movie. So I think probably he would do it because he's as a director, I think he's very directive, and I think he really wanted to avoid stunts as much as he could. I don't think, that's why I wanted to listen to male opinions as well, because I don't know if that happen only to her or to other actors as well? And what are the thoughts of, for example, Leonardo DiCaprio? We know that, for example, Leonardo DiCaprio cut his hand during Django. So we don't know if it's only because Tarantino likes to push the actors with whom he works to the limits. And on the case of Uma Thurman, it kind of crossed all the boundaries, of course. But I don't feel it like as a male-female thing. Also, he built two movies that are completely around female characters. Jackie Brown, Kill Bill. I know there's loads of backlash regarding Hateful Eight and how Jason Lee is constantly being beaten by male characters. But I mean, I don't see it as a feminist thing because I don't really believe on those kind of things and those kind of views. Also, you have some male characters also being beaten in Tarantino movies.
Everybody gets beaten.
Everybody gets beaten in Tarantino movies. It's not because they're males or females. And I think the Uma Thurman really doesn't apply as a male-female thing. I think it's just because of the way Tarantino works with his actors, which is probably very tough.
Yeah, I mean, two comments on that. Obviously, from a male perspective, the first one would be the fact that sorry to burst your bubble, but he was dating Mira Sorvino when she refused sexual advances from Harvey Weinstein, and he defended her. Same thing with Uma Thurman, and he was upfront about it, saying he knew plenty to do more than what he did.
Yeah, I remember that.
But from the working in collaboration, the violence on screen, I think Scorsese did something with like female violence. Like everybody gets killed or shot in this movie, right? So I mean, I really on that subject.
I really don't agree. Also, because now I'm thinking about Shoshana. We spoke about Shoshana in *Inglourious Basterds* before. She's like probably one of the main characters and one of the strongest characters on that movie.
Yeah.
And she's a woman taking the lead.
Absolutely. And I would even go a step further. If I wanted to hear an opinion, and there's an opinion I want to hear and probably do some research on, is actually Zoe Bell, who's the stunt coordinator and who did the stunt work for Uma Thurman in Kill Bill. So she's the one, she's in almost all of his movies. All the sequences in Death Proof, it's her on the hood of the car. So it's like, whoa, she would be the one to provide that additional info. Okay, I believe one last thing I'd like to ask you. Do you think this award season will be Tarantino versus Scorsese for Best Director, Irishman versus Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
Oh, yes, definitely. I'm really looking forward to see The Irishman as well. And in terms of actors, it's going to be a very interesting season as well because we have obviously Leonardo DiCaprio, but there are rumors that Joaquin Phoenix is going to deliver probably one of his best performances in Joker.
Yes.
So this is going to be a very interesting award season. Finally,
it's already crowded with Tom Hanks, Antonio Banderas, Leonardo DiCaprio, De Niro in The Irishman, and I was looking at currently. Well, I know it's only August, but actually it's quite polarizing because you have in the major categories you have either DiCaprio or De Niro as the frontrunner, Pitt or Pacino as frontrunners in supporting, directing Tarantino or Scorsese, Best Picture, Irishman or Once Upon a Time, and even Anna Paquin and Margot Robbie are in contention. But again, I don't think that will be the case. I don't think she will be nominated.
Yeah, I don't think she will. Also, her role is too minor and it's not like breakthrough. So I think for sure Leonardo DiCaprio will get a nomination, and I hope he does. I'm not sure if he's going to win this time.
Will win. I think Brad Pitt will win.
I think Brad Pitt will win. Brad Pitt completely steals the show, and he's amazing on his Cliff Booth impersonation.
If I kill you with these bare hands,
my hands are registered as lethal weapons.
Lethal weapons.
I kill you, I go to jail.
If you kill anybody with your hands, it's called manslaughter.
That scene is absolutely insane, and also hands down to the actor that plays Bruce Lee.
Bruce Lee.
He's very, very good, even though all this backlash from Bruce Lee's daughter, she's saying that her father was not like that prick.
Yeah.
But even though I was reading an interview from the Mike Moe, the actor that plays Bruce Lee, and he was mentioning that he was casted for this role because he's a master on martial arts as well, and I think his wife told him like just go to that room and tell Quentin Tarantino how much you want that role. And that's exactly what he did.
Well,
It worked.
I didn't know that bit, but what I read was actually that so Bruce Lee played Kato in the Green Hornet TV show. And I believe there was a crossover between Batman and the Green Hornet, and Bruce Lee refused to get his ass kicked by Robin, so he actually ran out of the stage where they were shooting the battle, and the episode had to be rewritten as a draw. So, I mean, if this is actually true, I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't see it.
And also Tarantino,
Yeah.
he responded to Bruce Lee's daughter and said that like I listened to interviews and he was not that angel that you're trying to say.
Of
And then she
course.
told him like either shut up or apologize. And
Yeah.
and he was like, yeah, I couldn't kill you.
I will finalize with my deep wish to actually see Damian Lewis, despite being on what 5 seconds for screen time, doing a Steve McQueen biopic.
Wow, that would be amazing. That would be amazing.
And that's it. Claudia, once again, thank you so much
Thank you for inviting
being
me.
Pleasure.